Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miller.
Here.
Eckhart.
Here.
Benson.
Here.
Melton.
Here.
Valencia.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Stelling.
Here.
Hannaford.
Here.
Item number 4 is discussion and action on the consent agenda. All of the following items, which concern reports and items of a routine nature normally approved at City Council meetings, will be approved by one vote of the council. Any member of the council desiring to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed from the consent agenda and placed for discussion as the next item on the regular agenda. It will then be considered separately. The consent agenda consists of the consideration and action on the following items: approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 21st, 2015, and approval of claims in the amount of $206,173.22 and payroll expenses of $91,026.73. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Benson and a second by Councilman Miller to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Benson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Hannaford.
Yes.
Valencia.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Stelling.
Yes.
Eckhart.
Yes.
Item number 6, reports from boards and officers. Is there a Water Sewer Committee meeting report?
Yes, we had a meeting and discussed the AMR project and the start times, I believe, in November.
Actually, with AMR, I expect them here on October 19th to start installing meters.
And then the Young Street project, the water line, through there and the coordination with the college on that. And the Patel project in water and sewer, possible water and sewer line in Maine. And that was about the, well, the water rate, the conversion when we go to the new AMR meter reading, going from cubic feet to gallons. And that was about it.
Are there any questions for Councilman Fisher or anything to add from those at the present? Thank you. Item B is a special tourism meeting from 9/22.
From the minutes, it does look like the Tourism Committee did approve the annual $6,000 for the Chamber Secretary, Tourism Secretary, and also approved the $2,250 to Red Carpet Country, $1,656.41 for the Ride for Hatfield Poker Run, and $15,000 to the 2015 NWOSU Ranger Rodeo. They did receive a report from me on the tourism tax audit RFP. We did not receive any qualified requests for qualifications. None of them sent us anything. None of the firms that we applied to sent us a request, sent us any information. With that, we will probably move toward trying to find one and just negotiate with them as a professional service. Do have a couple of them that would be interested in maybe trying to do something in the December time frame. I just need to get in touch with them and report back to the committee.
Are there any questions for Business Manager Dunham?
What was the $6,000 on item 4? Was there kind of a layout of what it was used for?
Well, that's used for $500 a month, basically, is to reimburse the Chamber of Commerce for a tourism center secretary. It basically goes to pay salaries for that person.
Any further questions? Councilman Miller, would you share a Finance Committee report?
We also had an update on the water sewer tables. I think we decided where we'll probably be with that when the time comes. We had a long discussion about the development of a business license ordinance, which we'll discuss in this meeting shortly. Those two items took up the majority of our time today after signing claims. We've got that if anybody wants to look at it.
Any questions for Councilman Miller? Thank you. The mayor's report. You see listed the meetings that have been attended, as well as some of them that are upcoming. Of note, I did attend my first OML conference in Tulsa. So it's a good production. They have a lot of good information. The cities from across the state come in, and there's a lot of best practices out there that hopefully we can see our community bring some of those to the table in due time. I was honored to attend along with Dr. Hannaford, the press conference and check presentation to the city of Alva from the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust, and it was a $45,000 grant that they've given to make upgrades at Hatfield Park, and that was really a good event. They've done some things with exercise equipment, and they're doing some things with lighting in the coming year, so it's good for us on that. Some things that are coming up, obviously we've got a busy week this week with university as well as public schools and homecoming for each. Going to be a lot of people in town, so look forward to seeing some faces, I guess, that we haven't seen in a while, and just having a good, busy weekend here in Alva. Have had several different remarks and requests from members of the community regarding street projects, the healthcare facility application, street lights, some airport questions, as well as some EMS questions that I've passed along to the city business manager to address. Let's see. Some of this we'll talk about later. We do have appointments for the Rec Park Board on this meeting agenda, and we did have a resignation from the Airport Board, which we'll have to have a new appointment in the future. In the process of talking to Airport Board members, and if any of you council members or members of the public would have suggestions on someone that would like to serve in that capacity, I would be all ears. A couple other items I've listed down there, with regard to where the process, one of them in particular, process is with the Integris application, and just to let the public that are present know, the council members as well as the city business manager have had an opportunity to meet with Alva Hospital Authority and Share Medical Center leadership to discuss potential negotiations for specialty services with Integris. So that process is moving forward. I know I was informed that as of October 9th, Integris had received the certified letter from Share, and that, as of last Thursday, they'd received the letter and are anticipating a response by October 9th. And so we will continue to wait to see how that goes. We have until November 17th to act on the application for permit. That would conclude my report. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. City Business Manager report.
Okay, well, the first thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is House Bill 1965, which goes into effect on November 1st. This makes texting while operating a motor vehicle a primary offense and carries a $100 fine. While the city officers, police officers, do have the ability to enforce this law, without a municipal ordinance for this offense, those fine dollars would go toward the district court or the state. I've talked a little bit with the city attorney. I've talked with the police chief about this, and I think that, in my opinion, it would be in the city's best interest to enact a ordinance that would allow those fine dollars to be prosecuted in municipal court. And would anticipate presenting the city attorney with a possible ordinance in the near future to get him to weigh in on. The other thing that I've been working on up until tonight would be a new rate schedule for water and sewer services. When we change over, and based on some conversations I've had, I think there's some misunderstandings about this. The city of Alva at this time is not looking at any utility rate increases. What we're looking at is just moving our utility rates from a cubic feet calculation to a gallon calculation. Right now we have a mixture of cubic feet meters and gallon meters. When we go through the AMR project and get the new meters in, they will all be gallon meters. So what we're going to be doing is moving our rate structure from a cubic foot structure to a gallon structure. There's no anticipated increases because of rates for that project. As a matter of fact, the Finance Committee, the Water and Sewer Committee, and I have worked real hard to ensure that the rate structure we put in to place would be have as little to impact because of rates on the customer as possible. We do anticipate that because of the age of some of our water meters out there, that there will be customers that have increases due to usage. As water meters age, they slow down. They don't read as accurately. These will be all new meters. And they will record the actual water that goes through that meter more accurately. That would be the only increase that I would anticipate at this time. The current job openings that we have right now, we've got one sanitation worker 2 position open. We're still advertising for a part-time airport attendant, but actually we have 2 part-time attendants in the process of being employed right now. We've got a police officer 1. We've got a recreation center maintenance worker, a full-time paramedic, and a part-time EMT basic in the ambulance department. Some of the upcoming meetings that we have, we'll have a sanitation committee meeting following this meeting tonight. I've got an OML legislative committee meeting on Wednesday, a wayfind signage meeting on Wednesday also. Board of Adjustment and the Airport Commissioner are both scheduled for October 13th. That is a Tuesday because Columbus Day, I believe, is the 12th, which is a federal holiday. And then on the 16th of October, I've got the OML, the Oklahoma Municipal League, Oklahoma Tax Commission Liaison Board meeting. Some upcoming meetings that some of you have in front of you tonight. On October 22nd, there will be in Woodward, there will be a new Municipal Officials Institute. Any newly elected official is required to attend one of these meetings within their first year of getting in office. So if you would fill out the form, October 22nd would be a great one for you to attend over in Woodward. And then if you wanted to stay over for the evening activities, there will be a district dinner meeting that night in Woodward also at the Woodward Conference Center. On February 20th, If October 22nd doesn't work for you, on February 20th, there'll be a newly elected officials institute meeting in Stillwater. So both of those are relatively close. If you'll fill out the form and get it back to me, I can get you signed up for those meetings. And other than that, Mayor and Council, that'd be all that I think I have to report tonight.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Dunham?
Joe Donovan, in light of our current declining sales tax revenues that we see each month, do you anticipate some type of budget adjustment going forward through the rest of the fiscal year?
We could, waiting to see what our sales tax numbers come in at this month. We did budget less in sales tax collections this year, anticipating the decline. We just need to see how we are coming into as far as those projections are. If we are in line with the reduced projections that we had, there'd be no need for any kind of adjustments to be made. A lot of the capital improvement items that we have in the process right now, such as the AMR, such as the Young Street project, both of those are funded from proceeds we received last budget year. We've also got another project out on Sealing Street that we'll continue with. We've received a grant for that one. So some of those projects will have to continue. But we will be evaluating the expenditures we have on a day-to-day basis, and on some of our other capital expenditures. We'll evaluate those monthly as we go along.
Transfer station, are we wrapping it up?
We've got two projects left to finish up out there. One is to get the heat in the building and the exhaust fan in the building. I still expect us to be able to turn that over to DEQ for final permitting the 30th of this month.
Question regarding the housing situation for EMTs. Have we made any progress on researching options for that?
We have looked at that. The last housing option we looked at for EMTs was even more expensive than the first. The director is researching other options for that at this time, but it is something that is still on the forefront of our thoughts and what we need to try to get accomplished.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Dunham. Item number 7 is discussion and approval of the appointment of Kinsey Ely to the Alva Recreation Complex Board for a 3-year term. I have spoken with Miss Ely, as has Business Manager Dunham. She is willing to accept that appointment and has, I guess, a lot of energy and motivation for that particular board. So I would ask that the council approve the appointment of Kinsey Ely.
Approve the appointment of Kinsey Ely to the Alva Rec Board. Second.
Chris? I have a motion by Councilman Fisher, second by Councilman Eckhart, to approve the appointment of Kinsey Ely to the Alva Recreation Complex Board for a 3-year term. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Fisher,
Yes.
Eckhart,
Yes.
Hannaford,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Melton,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Billy,
Yes.
Valencia.
Yes.
Item 8 is discussion and approval of the appointment of Matt Stratton to the Alva Recreation Complex Board for a 3-year term. Just like with Miss Ely, Mr. Stratton is also been made aware of the commitment and is willing to make that commitment to the Recreation Complex Board for the 3-year term. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve Mr. Stratton.
Move to approve the appointment of Matt Stratton to the Alva Rec Complex Board for a 3-year term starting October 2015.
Second.
Have a motion by Dr. Hannaford, a second by Councilman Benson to approve the appointment of Matt Stratton to the Alva Recreation Complex Board for a 3-year term. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Hannaford.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Valencia.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Stelling.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Eckhart.
Yes.
I do have one reappointment, and I want to, before I get to that, I want to publicly say that we're grateful for the service that both Lita Grimsley and Michelle Mapes provided to the recreation complex over the years, and we're hopeful that Kinsey and Matt can do a good job in those positions. 9 is a discussion and approval of the reappointment of Shane Hansen to the Alva Recreation Complex Board for a 3-year term. Shane is willing to continue on in that position, and I would request a motion from the council to approve his reappointment.
Make a motion to approve the reappointment of Mr. Hanson to the Recreation Complex Board, October 2015, for 3 years.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Benson, a second by Councilman Valencia to approve the reappointment of Shane Hansen to the Alva Recreation Complex Board for a 3-year term. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Benson.
Yes.
Valencia.
Yes.
Eckhart.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Hannaford.
Yes.
Stelling.
Yes.
Item 10 is discussion and action on the development of a business license program ordinance for the city of Alva.
This item has been talked about with small groups of council members for some time now about the need for this. The city of Alva does have a business license program ordinance in place right now, although it's very dated. Does not address a lot of the issues that we are currently facing and will face in the future. Many cities throughout the state of Oklahoma and throughout the United States have implemented or enacted a business license program such as this. And it's been discussed, like I said, by members of this council, and I felt it was a good time to discuss it with the full council before we move any further with this, to make sure everybody was in agreement that this would be something that would be beneficial for the city of Alva. For many cities, the license does not require a fee, or does require a fee, but is not considered a revenue generator. If once you start into working with a license such as this as a revenue generator, it becomes more of a tax than it is a tracking mechanism, is what it's meant to be. And this item is, like I said, this item is used as a tracking mechanism to ensure every company which is required is collecting and remitting sales and use taxes, which are required by the state of Oklahoma and the city of Alva, and to make sure all of our communities, all of our businesses are operating on the same playing field. They are all collecting taxes. Anybody that comes into our community that is, whether they're setting up as an itinerant merchant on the side of the street, or whether they're a food truck that's coming in for an event, that they're collecting city of Alva taxes, and that tax is then in turn remitted back to the city of Alva. Right now, we have no mechanism in place to ensure that we are receiving the proper sales and use tax that we are owed from transient merchants that come through town. Such a program will also help the identification of any new businesses which are either emerging or wanting to relocate to Alva. In many instances, the city is actually the last person that's aware that these businesses are emerging or relocating. And when we do become aware of it, it puts us in a reactive mode to ensure that utilities are provided instead of a proactive mode in which we would like to be. There's, as far as, I know there's been a lot of discussion based on the way my phone has rang today, that this is a tax that we are going to be collecting an additional fee from businesses in town. Quite frankly, I could care less whether or not we collect the fee for this service. I'm more interested in ensuring that everybody is remitting the sales tax that is required, and that we have mechanisms in place to ensure that our brick and mortar business owners are competing on a level playing field with the transient merchants that come through. I don't feel like it's fair for a brick and mortar building that is on one side of the street to be competing against a transient merchant that it sets up on the weekend across the street to sell T-shirts or hats or blankets or whatever, and us not know for sure that they are collecting and remitting that sales tax to the city of Alva. Because right now there's no way for us to follow up on that and to ensure that that happens. This item's brought here as the discussion item, and if it is something that the council does see a need for, then I would expect that it would be turned over to a committee. And the finance committee is probably the most suited for this, in my opinion, at this time, to try to develop a ordinance that would be suitable for the city of Alva for such a purpose as this.
If it's not an income generator, why would it go to the finance committee?
The sales taxes.
Because it's related back to it's mainly related back to the sales tax collections that we have.
So this first part, this section 12, this is the current ordinance that's already been voted in or already in place?
What you have would be starting at the top of what is labeled as page 1.
Right.
It says chapter 12, businesses. Going back to page 7 is the current.
And the Bartlesville is only in here as a reference for potential ideas, correct?
That is correct. It is here just as an example of what one community has done.
Okay.
I can have, there are numerous communities around the state that we can pull from. This is just an example, and this is only a portion of their business ordinance. Bartlesville's business ordinance is 80 pages long.
How long has this ordinance been in place, the one we have now?
As near as I can tell right now, it's been in place since '94.
20 years.
Right.
So you're saying we're not enforcing it?
No, I'm saying we're enforcing it, but it's dealing with things like pawn shops. It does not address food trucks that we have today. It does not address transient merchants that we have. It does not address any of those issues. The parts that it does have that are in place that we do enforce them, yes, but we don't have any circuses. We don't have very many circuses coming to town. We don't have very many amusement parks coming to town. We don't have, to my knowledge, there's not a pawn shop in town.
It looks like section 1229 of the existing code already addresses the selling from vehicles and wholesalers, does it not?
That's just in the street.
It's just in city streets, and there's nothing in there that would, and it's just for transient merchants, it's just door to door. You can set up in a parking lot downtown, or you can set up in a parking lot across the street from on the boulevard, and that there's no permit required. There's nothing there that says that where we can go back. We collect no information from those people that we can go back and verify that we receive sales tax money from those people. when they sold things in our community.
It would be required merchants to have an Oklahoma tax commission permit, is that correct?
Yeah, they should, but there's nothing, we don't collect any of that information. We do not know that, I cannot say for certain that anybody that sets up along our streets or in the parking lots across from, in parking lots around on the boulevard, that they have a Oklahoma sales tax permit. And if they have one, there's no way for me to go back and check to know that that person is remitting that sales tax that they should have been collecting for Alva to Alva.
Well, if business comes to town, more likely they're gonna come and ask, they're gonna check on utilities up front, but if they don't register, how's that different than it is now? Other than, you're saying it's the better way to track them, whether or not they're paying taxes or not, but if they don't register.
Well, that depends on the ordinance that we would enact. If they don't register for, on that, with that, underneath that ordinance, there could be penalties in place for that we could prevent them from doing business across, yeah.
Is there not a way now to enforce that, make sure that they are paying the taxes? It's like the use taxes and stuff, isn't there already an ordinance about use taxes?
We do have a use tax ordinance, but there's no way for me to go, we have no checking mechanism. We have nothing. If you decided not, if you had a business and you set up down on the square and you didn't come in and tell us that here's my permit, and I didn't know what I didn't know if you were operating under Randy Stelling or Stelling Enterprises or some other corporation name that you had out there, there'd be no way for me to verify that sales tax was actually remitted to the city of Alva without us having at least a copy of the sales tax permit.
So the people that would potentially come to town and set up on a Saturday afternoon in a parking lot, who's going to check them on Saturday afternoon?
They would have
But what if they come in and set up Saturday afternoon and pack up that night and leave?
then it's an enforceable ordinance, the police department or any other municipal official.
Can I ask a question? Not right now.
No.
This is
Yeah.
council discussion.
We do have public comment at the end. I think what we should at minimum do is go back to committee with what our existing business license ordinance is and determine if it is suitable to our needs as a city, and review that. I think that there is no immediate need to jump into approving any ordinance or just right off the bat reapproving this ordinance. I don't think that's an appropriate action, but I think as Mr. Dunham has mentioned, it has been discussed in small groups up to this point. It needs to, if it's going to go any further, move to a committee and then come from committee back to council as a recommendation. If there is any recommendation to be had out of committee. So I think our appropriate action, do your due diligence as council members, get feedback from the public, pass that along to, I would say, as it's stated in the agenda item, that this be, and by Mr. Dunham, that we pass this back to Finance Committee for latter presentation to the council, and I would entertain a motion to do that.
Can we ask that once it comes out of committee that it's not necessarily brought up for approval at times where we have more time and more public input? Say they bring it to the council, here's what we have, not necessarily we're ready to vote on it.
Have another discussion before?
Yeah, like more of a, here it is, that way it gets out in the public some, instead of us trying to absorb it so quick and vote on it. That's that, it's just brought to us, and we're able to look into it and see once we got more questions.
Typically, it would just come back as a recommendation from the committee on whether they think it's worthy of the council doing consideration. It wouldn't come back for a vote on an ordinance. That's not the normal protocol.
I didn't know if it came back as recommendation to pass it or not to pass it.
If it's come back as a recommendation, if they felt like it was appropriate, then this board would vote to either go ahead and proceed and to try to put it into ordinance form, or to just terminate the examination.
Is there a number of days that a proposed ordinance has to be publicly posted before it goes to vote?
Not before it goes to vote.
No, an ordinance is approved by the council, and if it is approved by the council, then it has to be published to become effective. But there's no requirement in Alva or any community in the state of
Posted
Oklahoma.
beforehand.
Yeah, that's what you guys are for, to have that discussion with the voters.
Joe, now you mentioned that you felt like there wasn't a fairness between the current brick and mortar businesses that we have and those that come in on a transient basis. Have we had a lot of complaints from our brick and mortar business owners?
No, I don't know that we've had a lot of complaints, but I've noticed over the years a lot of transient merchants. We're having numerous more requests and inquiries on how to bring things like food trucks to town that are transient in nature. I think there's a lot of things that, and I anticipate that would continue in the future. And we've got no assurances that we are getting the sales tax that we're due off of those entities.
Are there any other Northwest Oklahoma communities that have a similar ordinance already in place that they're enforcing?
Ponca City is one that comes to mind. Guyman has one that comes to mind. Woodward, I believe, has one. There are.
Is there a reason we didn't use their example instead of?
The reason I use Bartlesville is that it's probably just to kind of start the discussion on it, it's probably the harshest one that I'm aware of. Bartlesville has actually prosecuted businesses for operating without a license. I don't know of any other community in the state that's done that. And it has some pretty harsh teeth in it. And that's the reason I chose those.
But to be clear, it's not a recommended
No,
policy.
it's not a recommended policy. It's represented as ours being relatively dated, to theirs at the other end of the spectrum being more on the harsh end of it.
Should we just bring forth some amendments to the existing rather than an entire new one? Would that not be maybe a better way to do that?
I think that's a possibility if it goes to the committee for discussion.
Yeah.
In answer to your question, Mr. Valencia, I have had restaurant owners question food trucks coming in.
And none of those have actually questioned me about anything. It's just I do have a lot of inquiries about food trucks recently wanting to come to town.
I personally would rather see some amendments for the door-to-door sales and parking lot panhandlers than what I'm seeing out of the Bartlesville sample.
I hate to put something in place that would hurt door-to-door sales, especially from schools and organizations and things like that require a lot of that for the revenue. That would be bad.
I think there's an exemption under Bartlesville. I think there is under most ordinances throughout the state.
Okay. I'm just saying I would hate to
Good NPO.
the problem.
There's something open right now that says door-to-door trading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
license then?
A lot of those individuals, if they are selling privately, if they're not a business, and one of the Facebook pages that comes to mind is, I think it's Northwest Oklahoma Swap and Sell or something like that. It operates a lot like a Craigslist or a garage sale type environment where it's one person buying from another. And there's not going to be any licensing to those aspects of it. As far as online sales, that's an issue that's more at the federal level right now, and trying to get streamlined sales tax enacted that will allow our brick and mortar businesses to operate where they don't have the unfair advantages of the Amazons and those big companies that are now selling without collecting sales tax. But that's more at a federal level. There's federal legislations and hurdles that have to be overcome before we can tax those, or to capture those sales tax dollars. But that is something that is in the works and has been in the works for at least 5 or 6 years now.
But you mentioned like the online thing, one person selling to another directly. How is that different from a food truck?
A food truck is,
It's a person selling to
but
a person.
it's also it's licensed as a sales tax item. I mean, they should have a Oklahoma sales tax permit.
Then shouldn't the person who's selling candles on Facebook have a sales tax license too?
Possibly. I mean, that's up to I mean, I don't know what the Oklahoma I don't know what the Oklahoma Tax Commission says on businesses like that. I
There's
know-
use tax.
I mean, there is a use tax that should be
They're
reported.
obligated to pay that by state statute, and if they don't, then they're in violation of state statute. So that's at least in place. It's the same consideration you're given here, though, is how do you enforce that, and how do you know that that's been paid or not? Because the city of Alva gets use tax as well from sales, internet sales.
So what's going to constitute a business? I mean, like if I was to go out and when I used to do a carpenter work, that might be a business. I don't have, I mean, what's going to define mine in terms of what a business is?
I think that'd come down to the definitions of what a business is that we want to put in place. I mean, those are things that we have yet to be discussed, and things that need to be discussed to develop something that works well for Alva.
I appreciate the discussion, I just don't see the compelling reason. One person to pay.
Will there be a motion on this item? All right, item number 11. Discussion and action on the continued development of a council board handbook for the city of Alva.
Again, this is another item that's been discussed in smaller groups. We do have the state mandated training that I referred to earlier that newly elected officials go to, but we have been developing through the Personnel Committee a council board handbook that would allow us to give some more detailed, it wouldn't replace the newly elected officials institute, but it could give some newly elected officials and long-term officials maybe more insight on what is expected of them as a councilman for the city of Alva. We've been working on this and developing this, and there's a few items. There's some things that we still got to do a little bit of refining on. It is a lengthy document. That's the reason I didn't provide the whole thing to you. I did provide you with a copy of the table of contents. That would be items going into this training seminar, or this book. And the training would be offered and would be brought in right now for communities that have items such as this, handbooks such as this. Our insurance provider, OMAG, does provide a training, a person to do the training and training for. This is listed as one of their best practices for communities. The document would include some demographic information. It would include some organizational and personnel information. Would provide information on the powers of city council and boards, as well as some best practices for councils and board interaction with employees. It's something that's been discussed, honestly, quite a lot at the personnel committee, but we felt at this time it should be brought to the full board to see if this is something that the council would like to see enacted for council members and boards.
What, you've listed a couple of the authorities here. What boards are you talking about?
It would be any of the boards that
Are appointed by the
that are
council.
appointed by the council. Rec board, cemetery, library, to name a few off the top of my head.
So this would be like requirement to attend a class or something, or informal class, or for these people?
I think it's up to the council as whether you want to make it mandatory or not. But it would be offered for newly elected or appointed officials to help them get a jump start on budgeting, for example, on their budget. It's what some of the priorities are that have been established from previous councilmen or boards.
I think for when we see a number of new appointments and they often want to help. They would like to serve. They don't necessarily know what they're getting into. And this kind of allows the council and to kind of set the tone for what their service would be. Lets them know the differences in their roles and responsibilities versus the paid staff. Lets them kind of know, some basis for, maybe some things about city government that they may not have a knowledge of, that they can better understand processes, open meetings, open records, any number of things from delineation of responsibilities to appropriate decorum.
Granted, I'm new on council, would some of this information be good still for everybody as a refresher, or even some that they wouldn't even know, not necessarily just for new?
No, and it would be offered, and I would anticipate training such as this to be offered annually to all board members and all council members.
Well, I'd make a motion to go ahead and continue the development of the council board handbook for the city of Alva.
Have a motion by Councilman Melton, second by Dr. Hannaford, to continue the development of a council board handbook for the city of Alva. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Melton.
Yes?
Hannaford.
Yes.
Eckhart.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Valencia.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Stelling.
Next item is remarks and inquiries by citizens. If anybody would like to make a comment, please approach the council, state your name, and limit your comments to 2 minutes.
Lynn, I think it was brought, Troy Brooks is my name. I think it was brought up that there is no requirement to publish an ordinance before it's voted on. I think that would just be part of transparency if before an ordinance goes to the vote, the public didn't just have to, a lot of people don't even know who the council member is. It would be published in the local paper so that the public can have time to review it, see what's going on before it actually comes to a vote, and then comment to the council member, either council member or the mayor or someone to put it up. So they could have some input on that, aside from it being published after it already becomes an ordinance. I just really like to encourage that. I think that would be the right thing to do. That's the thing about it.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Hofen. I just, in comment towards the business licensing, I feel like the state of Oklahoma is already in the process of collecting tax. When a business remits their tax, they remit all of the tax to the state. And does the state not remit Alva's portion back to them? Isn't that system already in place?
Well, the only difference is that the business that is remitting has to tell the state of Oklahoma who the individual entities are that it's supposed to admit to.
System, we have to state what county we're in and whether you're in the city limits or not, and you're assigned an officer from the Oklahoma Tax Commission that calls on your business and says, hey, I'm here to help. If you have problems remitting your tax, if you have any questions, and you remit your tax through a website, so it's collected 100% by them, they remit it back to the city based on what you told them your address is and things you fill out. You skip them up and don't remit a tax, they're calling you saying, are you still in business? So I feel like they're doing a pretty good job of enforcement already. Why would we want to duplicate at a cost to the citizens or put our police officers in position with our tax collectors? I just think that's a bad idea.
I'm Jim Scrivener, and when I go to swap meets across the country, out of the state, and in the state, but in the state, when the tax person comes around and gets my sales tax number, when I go out of state, they give you an envelope, and they want you to send it back. I don't know how many actually do, I always did. But anyhow, I think, and what he brushed on about the state taking care of this, if you want to, these guys that sit alongside the street, and again, I don't need a police officer to be a tax collector, but how long does it take for an officer to drive up there, and who are you? They tell them, say, do you have the state sales tax number? Which trickles down to us. And when they say yes, I'd like to have that number. When they say no, you get their name, address, phone number, et cetera, and mail it to state and say, sick 'em, boys. We don't have to have an ordinance, and we get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you all for your comments. Are there any other comments? Are there any remarks or comments from council members?
Yes, I'd like to make one, please. In the last sentence of your mayor report, it says that Joe Don or Joe Hannaford will be attending any meetings between Integris and SMC on the Integris share deal, and it just seems a shame to me, as I have stated several times. I'm a concerned council member that's pro-Alva, pro-share, pro-medical infrastructure, and I'm having a hard time understanding why, when I voice a concern and would like to be included in any talks between Integris and share, that one is not allowed to when it's relied on me to make a vote in association with that.
I just disagree. I think we appoint a council member to serve on the hospital authority, and I think we have a business manager to conduct our business. I think we can get our information from the people we appoint and hire to do those jobs.
Well, I'll say this, I didn't ask, so if you want, I throw this out, just if we need to have a selection from the council, that's fine with me as well, so.
Well, I can't say I'm the only one, but I can speak for myself, and I would just like to see this go the best that it can for the people of Alva, because that's who I represent, is the citizens.
But there isn't anything wrong with having one representative.
Yeah, I don't see why there wouldn't be a
Thought
problem.
they're more the official, too many people deal.
I think it could impact negotiations. I don't think it's our business to tell Share Medical Center or Integris what they need to be doing. I think it's our business to make sure that when they do things that we hold them accountable. But a negotiation between providers, I don't see that as this body's responsibility. We have an application for permit to consider at some point, with or without any further discussion between Share and Integris. Now, I think that the fact that they are talking is a good thing. I think that what we've been provided in writing is also good. And I just don't see appointing anybody else to attend those negotiations, because I really think we should just have someone there to listen but not speak.
I will say, I think we've put Dr. Hannaford in a very, very awkward position.
He would only be present as a member of the hospital authority at hospital authority meetings. It's not an obligation. And if it's a hospital authority meeting, the entire public is welcome to attend.
That's it. I just wanted to say it.
Are there any further remarks or inquiries? We are adjourned.